It absolutely was the factor for the building of the Southern Theater. The previous theater and hotel next to it were wood structures that were lit by gas open flame. So unfortunately, this whole block caught fire after a fairly new theater was just built, and it destroyed the entire block. So as a result of that, then out of the ashes, so to speak, the Southern Theater came to be. It was a firm of Dobbin, Crum, and Ribel, local firm here in Columbus that were the chief architects. I don't have their chief engineers on record, so I'm not exactly sure who the engineers of record were for the building. Well, that is the primary focus of the building, was the architecture that you talk about from Chicago. And actually the firm, local firm, their chief designer worked on the Chicago World's Fair. So he was able to bring the influences that they used. But you see the uses of columns, a lot of gold and marble throughout the theater. So there were certainly some influences brought from the European theaters that had been built many, many years before the Southern Theater was built. Theater opened in 1896 as an opera house. It thrived for about the first 30 years of its existence as a live performance hall. But then in 1931, they installed a movie screen so they would start to show first-run movies. That continued until the 40s and 50s, and about that time, really, the decline of the Southern Theater started to take place. They tried to make it a second-run movie house for a while in the 60s. That only lasted for a few years, and then unfortunately, the late 60s, the theater closed until it was refurbished in 1998 when it reopened, and we've been up and running for about 11 years now. Early on, it had some great historical figures, you know, from the entertainment world that played here. Al Jolson, W.C. Fields actually was on stage at one time, Mae West. The Marx Brothers played on this stage. Then when it went into the movie industry, or playing as a first-run movie house, certainly all the big-time movies at the time played here in the 30s and 40s. Many of the great opera stars, since it opened as an opera house, played here. And actually in 1903, there was a production of Ben-Hur on this stage where they had a cast of over 350, including 2 chariots with horses on a round table that chased each other around for the chariot scene in Ben-Hur. And then also, it was one of the very first theaters in the country to perform the art of flying an actor. In this case, it was a production of Peter Pan that took place here in the early 1900s. And one of the great stories about that is, if anyone knows about theatrical flying, there's a family called the Foy family that developed, and still to this day has, the patent on flying actors and actresses around stage and out to audiences. They were just perfecting that, and hadn't patented the design yet. So they actually slept above the ceiling of the theater while they were in here for Peter Pan, for fear that someone would come in the middle of the night, steal their design before they had a chance to patent it. Well, really, it was a couple things. In 1926 and in 1928, the Palace and the Ohio Theaters were built, which were only a few blocks from this theater. And they were bigger facilities. This was at the time about 1,400 seats. Today it's about 900 seats. You make the seats bigger as you renovate, because we've all gotten bigger in this country as we've gone on. So the theaters at the Ohio and the Palace, which were also movie houses and live performance houses, were these glitzy, brand new, you know, in 1926, of course, brand new facilities. And at 3,000 seats, they really stole a lot of the live entertainment business out of that. So that's why this went to a first-run movie house. Then as you got closer into the 60s and 70s, it was about the same time that a lot of declines happened in downtown, when people were leaving and not living downtown any longer. We're going out to the suburbs, so that whole urban setting really took a nosedive, and the businesses, including the theaters, closed behind those people exiting. So while they might work downtown, they were no longer coming and playing downtown. They were going out to the multiplex theaters and the strip malls in the 60s and 70s. It's hard to describe, because as we look around and see the beauty of the theater today, it's hard to describe what we saw back about, I guess 16 years was the first time I came in this building. Literally every piece of paint was peeling. Most of the plaster was either about to fall off or had fallen off. The seats were long gone. The carpeting was long gone. The stage had rotted. It really looked like someone had just walked away, locked the doors for 20 or 30 years and not done anything to the building. I think it talks all about the culture. This theater was one of the very first buildings in Columbus to have electricity. That's why you see sort of the odd-looking light bulbs that we have. They're called an Edison light bulb, because we replicated what the lighting would have been like when you walked into the theater originally in 1896. So it being one of the very first theaters, or businesses, not just theaters, in Columbus to have electricity, a lot of significance there. It became the anchor for the southern part of downtown, because at that time the northern part, growing towards Ohio State, was filling in with businesses and things. So there was concern that the south end of Columbus, south of the State House, would sort of die away. So that's why they thought the hotel and the theater were important to kind of anchor this end of downtown and promote other businesses happening. It remains one of the very few, the only theater in Columbus actually that has 2 balconies in it, and one of the very few in the country that has 2 balconies in it. So the significance of the things that took place, some that we've already talked about, you know, W.C. Fields playing here, George M. Cohan, I don't know if I mentioned him playing here before. You know, that history happened on this stage, and you know, we'll have that history to build on as more artists come and get their start here. This one does not, that I'm aware of. We do have, well, it's out, we don't have our ghost light out on stage right now. The spirits here, the only ones I've picked up, very few, to be honest with you, have been friendly. So that's good, because not all theater ghosts are friendly. So I've been in here very late at night. In fact, I've been here in the middle of the night and have felt okay. So I think we're okay. I think we're okay when it comes to ghosts here in the theater.
Well, they've obviously kept the spirit of the building alive, so.
They have. I think they're pleased with what we've done.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.